Welcome to the Great Beer State podcast from the Michigan Brewers Guild. The Great Beer State is a weekly show sharing conversations and stories from the passionate people who contribute to our vibrant Michigan beer community. It is made up of a mix between full-length archived interviews from the Guild's first documentary book project, A Rising Tide, Stories from the Michigan Brewers Guild, and conversations recorded in the here and now. Each episode is kicked off with a conversational update from host Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Guild, and the Brewangelist Fred Biltman, author of A Rising Tide. Here's Scott and Fred. Welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State podcast. My name's Fred. I'm here with Scott, and we're in Season 2, Episode 12, featuring Danny Ranville of Bière to Mac Brewworks in just a little bit. But before then, we'll talk about some updates, what's happening, what's going on, and get to our Brewers Dozen shout-outs. Scott, welcome to Episode 12.
Thanks, Fred. As always, it's nice to see you, and it's always fun to be talking about a Michigan brewery. It's another fun and interesting interview. So I really enjoyed getting to learn a little bit more about Bière to Mac Brewworks and listening to Danny talk.
Yeah, I did too. And we'll get to that in a little bit. I think it's also interesting. We're just a couple weeks before heading up to the UP for the Fall Beer Festival there on September 11th. So there'll be a lot of beer traffic heading across the bridge. So it's a good time to think about where you might want to swing by on your way to and from beautiful Marquette.
Yeah, my recommendation is to head out early, hit a couple breweries, and avoid the tractor traffic. It's easy to forget, but there's a tractor crossing of the bridge. I think it's on Saturday. It might be on Friday. I think it's on Saturday, the same day as the festival. But anybody driving up there on Thursday or Friday is sure to see a lot of tractors on trailers on I-75.
I see. And it's one thing to be behind the trailer carrying the tractor. It's another thing to be behind the tractor.
Yeah, it might not be a good time.
So any news about either that Fall Beer Festival or whatever else we need to know going into the fall? This is our it's the first one back, so there's got to be a lot of anticipation and emotion on both sides, the planning and the brewer and the consumer side, all of them.
Yeah, for certain. I know I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of people. Ticket sales have been going great for the festival, so I'm sure that we're gonna have a sellout volume, albeit slightly lower. We restricted the volume a little bit. We've got a few less breweries, but we're still we've got 85 breweries signed up, so it's going to be full on busy beer festival time. We are, one of the key things we're doing is having what I'm calling contactless pouring. So before we didn't think about these things. I think it's still a good idea, but rather than handing your cup to somebody and having them put the beer sample in it, I'm asking everybody to use either a pitcher or a cup. And so if you can imagine the person pouring the beer pours the beer into a cup. You shouldn't dunk the beer in the faucet anyway, but that's an important thing. And then you take that cup and you pour that beer into the guest's cup. So you don't ever take the cup from the guest and take it over to the faucet. You take a cup or a pitcher and pour beer into somebody's cup as they hold it or set it there, which, like I said, is probably a good practice anyway. But yeah, we're looking forward to seeing people and having a beer festival.
Yeah,
in Marquette. So I guess I should point out it'll be the 12th annual UP Fall Beer Festival at the beautiful Matson Lower Harbor Park in Marquette on Saturday, September 11th.
Yeah, it's exciting.
2021.
And tickets are still available?
tickets are still available. I'm kind of thinking we'll have a few left at the gate, but it all depends on how the next 10 days go. And I'm sure that sales will be brisk. So it wouldn't surprise me if there were no ticket sales at the gate.
Yeah. And anything else people should know, especially in terms of COVID protocols? A lot of events have been adopting different policies. So it's an outdoor event. What else is going on? You mentioned the pouring method, which is great, so that customer glass never hits a faucet. What else should people know or bring to?
Well, the only other thing really is to just kind of spread out a little bit if you're in line to get in, or just come a half hour later than the opening time and don't wait in line. But really, if somebody feels like they're compromised or really worried about COVID, the thing to do is probably not attend and wait for a future festival, because it's certainly going to feel busy, and I think that's a personal choice at this point.
Gotcha. So outdoors and general managing your space are the main things in place, in addition to that contactless pouring. Well, it's exciting, tenuous in some ways, because it's just coming back, and but boy, it's great to see after so many festivals missed that we got one on the books, and it's right around the corner. So everybody should check that out.
Yep. I would also like to mention that we are in full swing with our planning for the Detroit Fall Beer Festival, which will be October 23rd. Detroit's a little bit different community than Marquette. There's still time between now and then for things to develop and get worse or better as far as COVID goes. But we're optimistic that we'll be having that festival as well. And even before that, we've got another golf outing. It'll be our second golf outing. And this outing is planned for Treetops Resort in Gaylord, which is a great golf destination. It's Saturday, October 9th. And I'd like to think that we can build this into a fun annual event. Treetops has put together some room packages and other golf deals if somebody wanted to go and spend a couple of days or the whole weekend. It's looking like it will be a really fun time. And so it's a fundraiser, but I wanted to mention that golf outing October 9th at Treetops in Gaylord.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And that seems like a good segue into our middle of the Lower Peninsula Brewers Dozen for this week. You want to take us on a tour of this week's brewery shoutouts?
I will. If you can imagine that whole middle of the Mitten area, we'll start in Cadillac with Clam Lake Beer Company, which is right downtown Cadillac. It's a nice little brew pub, so they feature guest beers and other drinks, and they've got their brewery in the basement.
Yeah, and then we head over to Reed City Brewing Company in Reed City.
Yep, another small town, Main Street kind of brewery. I think that's on the main street. I might be mistaken. I honestly, the most time I've spent in Reed City, I think, was going to Reed City Brewing Company. But we'll follow that by going to Big Rapids, and Raven Brewing and Barbecue is, again, right in the downtown area of Big Rapids.
Yeah, and then over in Newaygo, we've got Newaygo Brewing Company.
And if we go to Clare, we can find Four Leaf Brewing.
Excellent. And then, I love seeing things like this. Like, you just think about how breweries in our communities have grown. And over in Mount Pleasant, we've got 3 different breweries to mention. And it starts out with Mountain Town Station in Mount Pleasant, Michigan.
Yeah. Yep. Mountain Town's, of course, been a member for many years. They're, one of the early brew pubs. And another fun place to go, another brew pub in Mount Pleasant, is Hunter's Handmade Brewery and Ale House. Hunter's Handmade is kind of their handle.
Yeah, and then you may have to help me with this distinction here. We've got Mountain Town Brewing Company, which I'm assuming is a second location for Mountain Town, or vice versa. Station.
It's actually technically technically not affiliated. This is one of those husband and wife teams where Mountain Town Station is a brew pub and Mountain Town Brewing Company is a microbrewery, so they cannot have the same ownership of those two types of licenses. And originally they were Mount Pleasant Brewing Company, but I think that there was a trademark issue with another brewery, and so they changed to Mountain Town Brewing Company. But they have since opened additional breweries with separate identities. So if we leave Mount Pleasant and travel south to Alma, you have Alma Brewing Company, which is actually, I guess it's not an offshoot of Mountain Town Brewing Company. It kind of is, but it has a completely separate identity. It's in a really cool old building downtown Alma. And the same is true of the last brewery on our list, and I'll let you mention that.
Which is St. John's Brewing Company in St. John's.
Yeah, so again, this is downtown St. John's, which is a cute little town. This was a bank, so and it's got this really unique character. So they're all fun locations to go to. Good food, good atmosphere, and tasty brews. But you can find the Mountain Town beers in all three of those locations, as well as beers brewed at those locations.
Awesome. So that's the Brewers Dozen for this week. Check them out. It's great to see all the activity, and sort of there's some breweries that have been around for a long time in that part of the state, and there's some newer next generation brewers as well. So always a good reason to swing on by and check them out. Which brings us to our interview for this week, which, as we mentioned, is Danny Ranville of Bière to Mac Brew Works. And I thought it was a great story, great sort of conversation about what's been happening. I think that neck of the woods was a little bit before breweries popped up. And I loved hearing his vision and sort of the path that Bière to Mac has taken over time, which is an interesting one.
Yeah, Bière to Mac, it's one of those places that it's not in the downtown area. It's a little off the beaten path, but it's a great setting. The Ranvilles, both Danny and his dad, it's a family business. They're super nice, welcoming folks. It's the type of place that that makes you want to go back. And they've got a neat focus. They've got family ties to the Mackinaw City area, and they have this they've modeled their beer styles after some of the history that you think of maybe when you think of Mackinaw City. And I think it may be the only, Danny mentions a grisette beer. And I think that maybe the only time I've had that beer style was at his place. You mentioned that Waypost is also making one. So, I probably need to get back to Waypost and try that there.
Yeah. Thanks for the reminder too. I got to bring him a can of grisette. I'm heading up there. I don't know exactly when this will air, but hopefully it airs before Labor Day, and I'm heading up there for Waters Life Festival, and going to swing by Bière to Mac as well, and even play a little music there on Sunday. So I will be bringing two grisettes together, hopefully, in a miraculous beer exchange. So of a lesser known style and a fun one. And yeah, I think I really liked how I don't know, that just felt like a good fit in terms of the French and Belgian styles and such a rich history up there. And I think they're it just feels like a good connection and a good place for that style of beer. So I'm looking forward to tasting them. And I think it was also really interesting to hear their arc in terms of how when they opened, they were one thing, including in their vision and to the public. And then as they grew up, they developed and changed and adapted both pre and during and post-COVID. I guess post-COVID is a little optimistic, but you get the idea.
Yeah. One thing that it made me think about also listening to Danny talk about his kind of open approach to drinking beer, and I agree. You know, I like to choose the beer for the time and the place, but sometimes you have what you have available, and that can be pretty darn good regardless of what it is. He mentioned it kind of a time and a place for drinking a regular industrial beer. And one thing that it makes me think of, and you and I have certainly talked about this, I probably mentioned it on the podcast, but if you take a beer lover of any major fizzy yellow brand of beer produced in the United States or North America, I guess, that person's still a beer lover. And how many of us and how many folks out there got started because they loved beer and it made them curious about local beer or specialty beer, craft beer, whatever you want to call it. Let's be sure to not discount beer lovers, because they're still beer lovers. And I think that they're a third of the way to being fans, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially as breweries reach out into more and more communities, which includes, small rural communities, you're just in contact. You become a place for the community, which means an inviting, welcome place for gathering where one can have drinks together. And I think that, we'll always support and champion quality made beer that's interesting and has character. But I think there's also, just like you said, there's other parts of being a beer lover. And that includes saying, hey, let's go to our local brewery and share a pint. And I think he had a really good attitude about keeping that inviting approach to the community, which is really important. So many different conversations end up talking about, most people agree we want to avoid being elitist and avoid being beer snobs. And also there's a lot of fervor towards being beer geeks and celebrating what it means to know what you're talking about and be able to analyze flavor. Those two things can coexist. And it's really just our posture and our attitude towards people and towards beers even. So I guess I digressed into a little soapbox there, but that's what that topic tends to do to us. I think a lot of us have been encouraging that for many years. And I, for one, was just really encouraged by seeing sort of this next generation brewery come in and stand up, having a version of that of his own, being really clear about who they are and what they want to do. And it's like, hell yeah, let's go. So, I mean, there's part of me that wants to be
with
there.
That,
sorry, the Zoom lag strikes again. But I'll let you kick it off in a second. But I was just going to say, with all that said, it's like it makes me want to be up there in the winter as much as the summer, just because they're going to have I'm sure they have just a changing landscape of people and attitudes as the weather changes. And I think that's really inviting. So I'll let you hand it off to Danny.
Yeah, it makes me think of they're kind of in the woods there a little bit, and makes me think of walking in there and stomping the snow off my boots and taking off my hat and gloves and coat and sitting down for a nice robust beer. So here's to Bière de Mac Brew Works and the Ranvilles. We'll let Danny Ranville and Fred take it away.
Cheers. All right, welcome to the Great Beer State podcast. I'm here with Danny Ranville of Bière de Mac. Danny, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, man. Good to be here.
So we are enjoying the process of just talking to brewery people all over this Great Beer State and kind of finding out how your brewery came to be, how you got into this crazy world, and then leading on up till today. So I'd love to start with what brought you into all of this. Where did the dream begin?
It's kind of wild. I put myself through college on Mackinaw Island. My family, we have deep roots in Mackinaw City. My grandfather was born and raised here. Our family, I mean, you can track it all the way back to the 1600s, but we'd come up here a lot for family reunions and whatnot. And there wasn't a brewery. And I came to a point in my life where I was kind of in between jobs and talked to my dad and ran this idea by him. And we started brainstorming kind of all of it. It never was like one day, hey, we're opening up a brewery. It's kind of like how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. We started talking to, our friends that are in the industry, and, they said, find a location, and we found a location, and then what now? And it's like, well, write a business plan. Okay. We wrote a business plan. What now? Find investors, probably a similar story to a lot of breweries, but here we are today, after 7 years of planning, and now here we are. We've been open for 5 years, and now we've got a brewery.
That's terrific. And tell me a little bit about, you're in a really unique place in the state. Tell me a little bit about your location and what that was like, looking for a brewery location and getting that, both, I guess, the search underway and what unique things were there, and then what you found.
Well, we had a location in mind, and last minute things fell through, and we found a second location, which is the one that we settled on, and we're just south of town, we're a mile and a half away from the bridge on Old Mackinaw Highway. So if you're coming up 75, you take the 337 exit, and instead of making a right heading towards the bridge, you make a left, and we're a quarter mile up the hill. So we're kind of, we're not right in the heart of downtown, which obviously has its pros and cons. You're not in the thick of things, so we don't get like massive foot traffic. But on the upside, the people coming here want to be here. They're seeking us out. They're coming because they're craft beer lovers. And so in that aspect, we have 3.5 acres out here, a nice outdoor setting. It's kind of a, people always say a well-kept secret. It's, if you don't know about us, it's likely that you drive right past us. But we're open year round, and we're out here just making some beer, just doing the best we can with what we got. It's great.
All right. I love it. So tell me a little bit about the beer story. What sort of were the first inklings about making beer, and what beers are you, show your personality the most?
Sure. Well, when we started out, we knew we wanted to, we knew we wanted a professional chef and a professional brewer, because I am not either of those things. We were like, well, if you're gonna do it on the commercial level with people and try to, do it well, we knew that we needed help. And since then, actually, the professional, the brewer that we were with and the chef that we were with have parted ways, and now I'm doing the brewing, self-taught. I've been brewing it'll be 4 years in October. Self-taught, and we've got a brew team of 4 here. Matt Peters, Seth Bitterman, and we just hired on Ben. And it's just a small 2.5 barrel brew system, and we're just, everything's on the internet, and we study hard and try to learn. And you start learning about beer, and you just realize how much you don't know. There's just a plethora of information out there, and we're just brewing like crazy. It's being in Mackinaw City, as you said, is kind of an interesting location. In the summertime, and there's 2.5 million people that cross the bridge. Like 10,000 people a day go to Mackinac Island. And then pretty much October 31st, after the colors have kind of run their course, Mackinaw City is, I think, officially a town of like 820 people, and half of them go to Florida. So you could literally shoot a cannonball down Main Street in the middle of winter and be fine. So it has.
It's perhaps that's been done. I think there's some cannons nearby.
Yeah, it probably has been done. But
it's got to be interesting.
Yeah. There's still, it's a natural bottleneck. People in the winter are still crossing the bridge. We get people who are chasing the colors and chasing blue ice when we get it. And then there's people always crossing the bridge, and you got to go through Mackinaw City. And we're here. Obviously, we limit our hours in the wintertime to kind of adjust to business, but we do stay open year round.
Nice. Well, I was just thinking when you were talking about the beer and brewing at 2.5 barrels, you got lots of opportunities to practice.
Yeah, I think today we just brewed my 323rd batch. We did an Imperial Red today. We've kind of found our niche in the French-Belgian arena. It kind of ties in with the history up here with the French fur trade and all of that stuff, but we really enjoy that style a lot. And we kind of cut our teeth and have kind of made a name for ourselves as a French-Belgian house. Granted, when you're in a tourist destination, you got to have an IPA on the board. You got to have, a wheat beer that's approachable. And, we just try to be as true to style as possible. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. There's a reason, those styles have stood the test of time over, centuries. So we don't do a whole lot of like real gimmicky beer. Basically just, I want you to say, a Northern English brown ale, and kind of have an idea of what that's going to taste like before you order it,
Yeah. I've always believed that styles and style names are really one of the first places to start creating that customer expectation.
Sure.
And so I think when people get a little too tricky, in my opinion, with style names, it's like, well, you can do whatever you want to do and you can call things whatever you want, but I love the idea that the first thing you're doing is trying to create at least a broad stroke expectation for the consumer to have a good guess as to what's going to be in the glass. So
sure, but I mean, on the flip side of that coin, you've got some breweries who went the complete opposite direction, and it's all about creativity and trying new flavors and seeing what's going to stick, and a lot of it's off the wall. But then every once in a while you hit something and a new style is born, or and that's cool too. And I think that. Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just agreeing that, I think that's cool as well. I just like the commitment to using style to describe what's in the glass and setting that first sip up.
Sure. So we have 14 brands on the board at any given time. And obviously with the 2.5 barrel brew system, our board, especially in the summer, changes so rapidly. When you make roughly 5 kegs in a batch and you kick 5 kegs on a Friday night, we're brewing our faces off up here in the summertime. But it's fun because it keeps things interesting. We can try new styles and, see what works, what people like, what sells, what we enjoy. It's just really fun. We're really, really enjoying what we're doing up here.
And are all of your beers sold in-house?
We have just started actually this year. We expanded a little bit on our, we got a couple double batch, some five barrel fermenters. And we've started concentrating quite a bit on offsite distribution. So we're on a couple places on the island, Pink Pony, Horns, the Iroquois, and then we're in a few places in Harbor, Teddy Griffin's, the Pier, Stafford's Pier. We're a few spots in, Sheboygan, a few spots up in the Sioux, a few spots down in Indian River, all the way down. I think the furthest we're at right now is Wolverine. We're at the Thirsty Sturgeon. So we're really making an effort to really get our beer on other taps, but we're not canning or bottling yet. We haven't gotten there.
Gotcha. So, and with the tourism and everything, I love that it's such a historic part of the state that I imagine everybody loves having a beer, and I think part of our growth as a community has been breweries popping up in small towns everywhere, in places where 20 years ago maybe we didn't think the population would support it, and now there's a real sense of pride to having local beer. And I just imagine what has that been like? What is the reception of your beer, both for the locals there in Mackinaw City coming in, but especially for these other bars putting on a beer from the region? What's that been like?
Well, we are. There's a couple. We were the first brewery here. We opened in 2017, January of 2017, and since then, a couple brew pubs have opened downtown that both are carrying our beer as well. But we're under the, kind of the impression that a rising tide raises all ships, just like, the craft brew industry as a whole. It's a very much the craft beer little guys versus, as we all know. But it's been fun. We've been embraced by the locals, just like every other brew pub in these small towns. And the tourists, that let's face it, in this day and age, a lot of people, plan their vacations going from beer to beer, brewery to brewery, doing beer tours. So we're just another stop on the map. And now with 2 other brew pubs in town, it just makes it that much more exciting for the craft beer enthusiast.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I love it. It makes me think of another question we ask most of the guests, which is sort of, as you were coming up and you were thinking about, hey, there's no brewery here, maybe we should start one. What was your sense of the community around either in Michigan or on the States and the craft scene? What was your awareness of the brewing scene and brewing community, and how did that change as you started the process of planning to open?
Well, I when I graduated college in 2008, I moved out to Denver. The economy was pretty tough, and I took the first job that was offered to me out in Denver. And that, as out west, they're about 10 years ahead of, as the beer movement as far as, Midwest versus out west. And that's where I fell in love with craft beer. And I'd come back, for Thanksgiving or whatever. My folks lived in Grand Rapids, and you go to Founders, you go to Perrin, and every year you'd come back and they'd be expanding or they'd be growing. And I kind of got to watch all these breweries in Grand Rapids growing, but only seeing, Thanksgiving, okay, let's go get a beer, and seeing, and then coming back the next year and seeing. So I knew that, it was a growth time in the market. But really, we just wanted to come up here in Mackinaw. My grandfather had 8 sisters. They all stayed in Mackinaw. So we're related to a lot of the 800 people that are here. And that's been pretty cool too, just to be back in Mackinaw and be back, a part of the communities. That aspect's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's terrific. So would you say there have been, as we get closer to the last couple of years, obviously everybody's undergone this incredible shift and change and trying to figure out what to do through COVID. But if we pause for a minute and stay prior to that, were there big eye openers in terms of where your vision or your execution, I guess part of it is getting into brewing, where things, I love hearing about sort of the difference between plan and then a couple of years in, the reality of how this thing grew to be what it is organically, and what were those surprises that made it what it is today?
I think something that we just did not see coming is when we hired on Chef Edgar Jacobs. He was the former executive chef at Boyne Highlands and ran all of those, all 9 of their restaurants. We hired him on because he was looking for a change, and he had worked at a brewery in Flagstaff and just was all about it. The element of skill that he brought to the table, I mean, we were winning all kinds of awards for our food. The My North Magazine, best mac and cheese, best burger. We're winning chili, and he just was so great that actually, you know, we kind of got put on the map for our food first. And the beer, you know, everybody, oh, it's great. We got great beer that was very complex and paired well with the food. But we didn't see that coming. And then COVID happened, and now we don't even have a kitchen because we couldn't staff it. So we've just been running this whole summer under food trucks. We've had rotating food trucks all summer long. And it's just been kind of a wild ride. If there's any common denominator over the years, it's just that you got to be flexible and you got to be kind of business savvy and agile, and you got to roll with the punches because nothing is, you know, stagnant. Everything is changing and evolving, and that's part of the fun, and also, you know, part of the frustration. You know, you find something that works for a little while, and then things change, and people go in different directions, and COVID happens. You just never know what's going to happen. So I think it's fun. I like to problem solve, and it's been a fun ride. Yeah, it's been a good time.
Awesome. I mean, it's all amazing to think about. I don't know, maybe it's been a minute for me, but to realize there's a food truck scene and that you're able to make that pivot and keep things rolling, and that such a significant shift to go from having a kitchen and a renowned chef running it. But it seems like such progress that there's cool food truck scene happening at breweries in Mackinaw City. That seems like you know, quite a shift from over the years, when I think that would have been hard to find a single food truck.
Sure, and I mean, the stars kind of aligned. I mean, having a food truck at a brewery is a copacetic relationship. They're going to sell more food because there's beer on site, and we're going to sell more beer because there's food outside. And that's been pretty cool. Plus, you have the rotating food trucks. And with the COVID, the interesting thing that happened was all these food trucks in a normal year are playing music festivals and, you know, parties and street festivals or weddings, or, you know, that's their, you know, that's their bread and butter. Yeah. But with the unknown of not knowing if people were going to be able to gather, they all jumped on like, well, this is a sure thing that we know people are going to be there, and it might not be as awesome as some of these events, but yeah, let's do it. You know what I mean? So it really worked out very well. I think for both the food truck business and us in that situation.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And there are these moments of encouragement and seeing, I don't know, the liveliness of collaboration and people figuring things out. That it's pretty awesome. You want to share a little bit about your space and property? You said you had a little more space being outside of town. What can people expect if they're coming to hang out for a weekend?
Well, we've got a really nice little space. It's 3,200 square feet. I'm sorry, 3,200 square feet, and it's nice. And we've got 14 beers on tap. We have tables inside, but we also have picnic tables outside with the food truck, so you can come in and order your beer and take it outside if you wish, or you can get your food outside and bring it inside if you wish. We've kind of transitioned from more of like a formal restaurant with like servers and wait staff and whatnot, and now it's just kind of come up to the bar, order your beers, and hang out, do what you will. We've got 3.5 acres here. We just recently cleared 1.5 acres behind us and really opened up the space. So we've got cornhole bags set up, a nice grassy area where the kids come hang out, throw some bags while the parents have some beers. And it's just really a nice, people coming up north want to be outside, so it kind of worked out perfect. You can just kind of hang out, have some beers. We got a couple of fire pits out there, some ambient lighting, and it's really, we've really, especially this year, really transformed the property. So there's tons and tons of space, and that's pretty much what we have. We've got rotating food trucks. If you go online to our website, we've got a food truck calendar. So if you are kind of curious beforehand, you can go and check it out. check out who's going to be here. And you can look at our website and see what our beer list is, but it's changing so often that thing's hardly, I mean, it has some of our mainstays, but it's not an up-to-date what we have on tap.
Gotcha. And so that just sort of brings me back a little bit back to the seasonal aspect. And I was just thinking about keeping all these plates spinning and that not only from a customer point of view, but you've already expressed some of the staffing changes and some of the staffing challenges, both from a kitchen point of view and then your sort of shift on the service side. And I just thought I'd ask, both then and now, like pre-COVID, post-COVID, your seasonality had to already be a pretty big challenge in terms of keeping staff through the winter and people going back and forth. So
sure,
I think it's a bit of an open-ended question, I guess. How do you, what have you found that seasonality? What does it give you, and what are the challenges, and how do you keep your team consistent and even moving forward through that?
It's a huge challenge. Probably Beer to Mac's biggest challenge is the seasonality, and right out the gate, you have to decide whether you want to be a brew pub or a microbrewery, and we went the microbrewery route because we knew that we wanted to distribute and get our beer to the people in the wintertime, because we just knew that, for the first 5 to 10 years, until you build your clientele and people know that you're here and your beer is worthy of them stopping, we knew that we had to really work on that. As far as the seasonality and staffing's always tough up here, summer or winter, just because there's such an influx of people that everybody's always hiring in the summertime. And in the wintertime, a lot of businesses close. So there's a lot of, people that some people go on unemployment, other people I work this job in the summer and I do this job in the winter. With us being open year round, that was pretty appealing to some of the local, workforce. But now without running the kitchen, I mean, we're pretty much staffing the place. I got 10 people. Back when we had a kitchen, we were staffing, in peak summer, like 45. But we've got the 4 guys on the brew team, couple bartenders, and then, George, our president, my father, and Molly, our outside salesperson. And that's pretty much it. And moving to this model, where it's a little more relaxed, not table service. You can just go up and get a beer, go up to the food truck. It's a lot easier to run the space and do all the things that we want to do. But it is a challenge. The seasonality is definitely there, definitely always there. And a lot of your winter business is reflected on what the winter's like. You're going to have a lot of snow, you get the blue ice. It just kind of depends, but it's a challenge. But we're going in. This is our 5th summer. We're finished. Well, I can't believe it's already August. We're finishing up our 5th summer, and just keep trucking along. It's been good.
That's great. I feel like I'm jumping around a little bit, but it just brought me to another question when you were talking about Molly and running the outside sales, and I just thought about the juxtaposition with a small brew system and lots of beers rotating through in terms of you've got 14 on tap. How do you make decisions about which beers should be out and about? Do you focus on a few recognizable beers, or are you rotating through and keeping it moving?
Yeah, our number one seller was by far the blueberry wheat that we've created up here. That beer pays the bills. Everybody loves it. It's refreshing in the summertime. That's what they want. And that was pretty much our number one seller. And then as of last year, when MLive, their 2020 beer of the year, they picked our Fleur de Mac, which was an anniversary blonde beer de garde that we did for the Fort. For their 125th anniversary, they came to us and kind of said, hey, we're going to be putting on this event. We'd like you to do a beer for our anniversary. And we said, no problem. And we did a French blonde beer de garde, which is not a super popular style by any means, but it's been so well received. And then MLive gave us that award, and it's just been bonkers. I mean, we go through so much of that. So right now, those are probably our two most asked for beers outside sales, but we do kind of, we let all the bars and bar owners know, like, hey, we have a very small system and we're kind of a boutique-y craft brewery at this point. So we've got a lot of interesting stuff. Our prices are just a tickle higher than everybody else's because we can only make 5 kegs at a time. But we do change. We do some seasonals, you know, our Michigan Maple Amber in the fall just sells like crazy. You know, any IPA that we have on the board, everybody likes because it just says IPA on it. As you know, #1 style in America. But, you know, we do a lot of really, really interesting stuff now. We've got a French farmhouse. I have a Latvian farmhouse on right now. We've got some Latvian yeast called Giannis the Eagle that's really interesting. It's dark in color, but it's like vibrant with lemon zest and lemon pith. Very interesting beer. And we've got a French Belgian, our Panzer Blitz on there, a French Grisette, our Second Beach, which is another French style that not a lot of people are doing. You know, and then we run the gambit on Belgians. We've got a Belgian Golden, a Belgian Triple. Our Loudmouth Blonde is a Belgian Blonde. And all of them, it's hard for us to pick because every bar wants a different one. So we just try to tell them, hey, this is what we have, but you got to work with us. You know, to put it as a rotating tap on your menu, and we'll do the best we can to get you that brand. But, you know, sometimes it's just not available yet.
Yeah. Well, and that gets them through the lineup a little, which I'm sure is good. And I think it's good for customers to know they'll have different opportunities to drink different things from you as well. So
definitely
sounds fun.
Yeah.
So, so family business in a way, working with your father. I don't imagine you guys grew up thinking you're going to do a brewery together.
No.
How's that gone, and what's it like? I guess what are the takeaways and working with family and you guys having a brewery together?
Well, it's fantastic. First of all, working with my dad is fantastic. You know, sometimes you hear the horror stories of the difficulties of working with your family, but we get along really well. 99% of the time we see eye to eye. We run all the ideas by each other. I get to do the fun work of brewing the beer, and he gets to do the more fun work of doing all the paperwork. But
keep selling that idea.
yeah, keep selling that. But I think I speak for both of us. It's just been really rewarding, really fun. You know, it's our relationship is, you know, we talk every day. We work together every day. It's fantastic. I love working with my dad, and he's really good at doing the administrative side of running a brewery. It's hard. There's tons and tons and tons of stuff to do. It's never ending. But we both had backgrounds that kind of lent itself to this. He was in the military when he graduated college from Hope College, went to the military. He was in naval intelligence. And when he got out, he managed a wine shop, learned all about that, which is similar, you know, knew about cheeses and food pairing and all of that stuff. And then he ran a couple other businesses, some nonprofit, and, you know, became very familiar with writing grants, which in this day and age has become very helpful with all of the grant opportunity and all the government money that has been coming out. So that's worked out really well. And then myself, I went to Northwood University and triple majored in advertising, marketing, and management with a double minor and, you know, language arts and entrepreneurship. And then I studied international business and international marketing. And then I went into sales. I did a lot of B2B sales, outside sales, cold calling, all that stuff. And then I was in the hospitality industry. I took wine classes in college, worked, you know, kind of putting myself through college, worked in the hospitality industry and all that stuff. So, you know, all of these the old jobs, it just really, it was kind of funny. It kind of cultivated, it made this, I think, a little bit easier to do with the kind of background that we both bring to the table. And not to mention, my mother was a registered dietitian, so that helped on the food side. My wife is the director of the Visitors Bureau, and she does all the events in the bridge crossing. So, I mean, collectively, as a family, we've really been able to make a go of it. And, it's everybody, the cliche, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. I mean, it's hard running a business. While it looks glamorous, it's a lot of grinding, and the business will take every second that you'll give it. So we're just slugging it out, trying to make a go of it.
I love it. It sounds like a great team, and sounds like your family gatherings will be, well stocked for the foreseeable future in terms of beverage choices.
Yeah.
And that seems like a good time to jump into our last call questions. So these are a set of questions we've been asking everybody here. And the first one, of course, we covered some of it, but it's really about the pandemic and how has this last, boy, it's hard to believe how long it's gone on, but this last more than a year and a half, all of that, how has it affected your business and then your industry outlook looking ahead?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who said it doesn't affect their business, who's in business, is lying. It's been a challenge. Kind of what I touched on earlier. All things. It kind of hit us hard because you took away our two forms of business. People couldn't go out and sit down and have a beer, which is our primary point of business. And second, they closed down all the restaurants, which was getting our beer out. So we didn't have any beer to sell, or nobody any places to sell beer. We did have food, so we just did what everybody else did. You did the best you can. You kind of just rolled with the punches. Nobody really knew what was going on. Staffing became difficult, but I think it taught a lot of people in the industry to look at things in a different manner. Look at really what works and what doesn't work. It made everybody kind of streamline their business, really concentrate on what, quite frankly, we're not running the kitchen anymore. And that was it wasn't even a decision. Our hands were tied. We couldn't get any help, but, with the kitchen no longer running and dealing with the administrative side of running a kitchen and staffing it and inventory and food and all that stuff, it freed up a lot of our time and energy to focus on what we're really passionate about, becoming a brewery, which is what we always set out to be in the first place. We never wanted to be in the restaurant industry. We just knew that you had to have food if you're going to be selling some high gravity beers, because you can sell one beer and then people are like, well, I got to drive, or, I can't, I got to drive. So, because we're a little off the beaten path. But if you have a sandwich, they go, on second thought, I might have that second beer, that third beer, or I might do a flight. So we always knew we wanted food, but with the food trucks coming in and taking care of that, the brew team, we've been going to, we've said yes to every single festival that we possibly could. We've, said yes to every bar owner that wants our beer. And we've really been able to focus and concentrate on the beer. And that in itself has just been really, really awesome. If you're looking for the silver lining of what the pandemic did to Beer to Mac, it kind of realigned our priorities. It's easy to get away from that when you got all the masses coming and the people, and then we're at a 2-hour wait out the door, for the food. And we were so food centric, and it's really kind of gotten us back on the path of beer, like focus on the beer. And that's what we've been doing. And it's been really fantastic.
Awesome. So the next question is, the more you know, what beer style are you most connected to, and what do you wish more people knew about it?
Again, I think we kind of touch base on, that we're a French-Belgian house. And, it's so hard to pick a single style because there's, as of like 2016, there was 152 different styles. And I'm sure that's nearly doubled since 2016. But I mean, if I can just give you the genre, I don't know if I can give you a specific. I mean, I personally really dig bone dry, complex Belgian beers. But a lot of different styles in the French Belgian category could fall into that. But the second beach, our French Grisette, is just really light, easy drinking, summer slugger. And, not a lot of people are doing grisettes, and I think that they are it's a wonderful style to explore. That style was kind of forgotten about and lost, and the American craft beer revolution kind of brought that back. Before that, there was only 2 breweries that in France that were commercially brewing the Grisette, and it was a beer that was designed in the 17 and 1800s when they were doing a lot of mining, and gris is French for gray, and the miners would come up at lunch and they'd be all gray, and they wanted a beer, but they wanted a beer that they could drink and still go back to work. So it's like a 4%, really refreshing, lemony, citrusy beer, and it's just really tasty. If you get a chance and you see a French Grisette, give it a shot. Very good.
Well, our little local brewery here in Fenville, Waypost, is making a Grisette, so we'll have to get you guys trading some beers. I'll have to bring some up for you.
Oh, that'd be great. We'd love it.
Well, Grisette sharing.
Yeah.
Your ideal home bar. So now this has changed a little bit, but with these questions starting really in the beginning of the shutdowns, we're talking to the pros about home bar setup, like suggestions for people who are spending more time serving and enjoying beer at home, whether it's glassware, draft system or no draft system. How do you think, what would be your recommendations to people for setting up the home bar?
I mean, I myself, I don't have a home bar. I have a 1-stall garage with a wood stove and a mini fridge in there, and I just drink beer right out of the can generally. You can take that as, people got their man caves and get all crazy, and that's cool too. But I've always just been kind of a fan of. I'm up here in northern Michigan wearing a flannel outside, drinking some beer next to the wood stove, having a bonfire, and just hanging out in nature. And to me, that would be. I mean, that's what I love to do.
That sounds like an ideal home bar for a lot of people. Sounds perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. That's good enough for me. I mean, I told myself before I got into the industry, I wasn't going to become a beer snob. I mean, the best beer out there is the one that's in your hand at the moment. There's a time and a place. I'll go to hunting camp and I'll drink a Labatt Blue Light, and people will probably cringe when I say it, but sometimes it's not always about what's in the glass. It's about who you're with and who you're sharing that glass with. And that's my mantra. Some people just aren't going to dig on the craft beer. I mean, and you're not going to change your mind. Some guys been drinking, especially up here in rural America, you got guys that have been drinking Budweiser for 50 years. They invite me over their house and offer me a beer, I'm going to drink it with a smile and enjoy it,
Yeah, right on.
That's just kind of, that would be how I'd answer that question.
Right on. Love and hate. So what current trends do you either love or hate, and how are they reflected or not in your brewery?
I mean, hate's a pretty strong word. There's some stuff. I mean, pretty much our brew team kind of collectively doesn't really care for sours, just personally drinking them. And that, I mean, while I understand, that's a very polarizing style. People either love it or hate it. And I don't foresee us doing that. But I mean, I don't hate it. I can appreciate it for what it is, but that's just not really our jam. We tend to err on the side of drier beers, more complex, interesting. As far as beers that I love, I mean, I think I feel like a broken record. We're all about the French Belgian up here and just exploring all the different styles. I mean, the yeasts are so cool. The yeast is such an unsung hero in the beer. Dealing with temperatures and esters and phenols and all of that stuff. There's just so many options with the French Belgian style that we really have grown to love and appreciate, those. So I guess that would be my love and I guess dislike, not hate.
There you go. All right. So how about your first drink? Do you remember the first alcoholic beverage or the most memorable first one?
I remember, I think somebody in high school, there was one guy who could get the beer. We were all obviously underage. And it was so weird, like looking back on it, he would your only option was 22 ounce, a box, of 22 ounce natty ice. That's all you would buy you. And looking back now, I think, well, that's so weird. Like why that, I don't know, but that was my first beer. It's just
there you go.
22 ounce natty ice. So we really cut our teeth on the best.
And that leads us to the next question sometimes, which is your worst drink. If you remember your worst drink.
I would say I don't drink Captain Morgan anymore due to excess in college. We'll just leave it at that.
So then there's one last one, which can be tough recalls sometimes, but we just think about what are the go-to hysterical stories from your time in beer, if you guys on the crew, or just the thing that cracks you up every time you think about it, in terms of your time in beer. It's pretty comical. We've got our Winnie the Bulldog, which is our Russian Imperial Stout, which is it's a fantastic beer and it's worth making, but we call it like our Eleanor because every time we brew that beer, it just always seems like it's a battle. Whether it's, stalled out or, whatever. One time we had one of the tri-clamps wasn't screwed on quite tight enough and boiling wort flying at us. It's just like we prepare for battle every time we go in to brew that beer. And I think we've brewed it probably like 8 to 10 times. We always have something. It's just like a running joke now that it's like, something will go wrong. So we always come in well rested and ready for that one. There you go.
Which is kind of, I guess, an inside joke with the brew team, but not so much. If you're an outsider, it's another story.
Yeah. So how about a bucket list drinking companion, somebody alive or dead who you have not had a beer with yet, but you'd love to?
Oh, that's easy. I'd probably say Bill Murray. I think he'd be awesome to have a beer with.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, you got to get yourself up to Mackinaw City just before the bridge. Turn left.
Yeah, man.
We'll have a beer with Danny.
Uh-huh.
Well, thanks for everything you're doing, putting the beautiful beer out in the world and making it happen. I really appreciate it. Encourage everybody to stop by and make a trip nearby. Your beer's out and about as well. So we'll look forward to getting up there myself. And thanks for talking with us today. Yeah,
thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure. And really look forward to seeing new faces around the tap room.
Yeah. Cheers, Danny.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening and sharing while supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. The Michigan Brewers Guild was formed in 1997 with its first summer beer festival taking place in July of 1998. Its now 5 annual festivals are dedicated exclusively to Michigan beer brewed by more than 270 member breweries. The Michigan Brewers Guild exists to promote and protect the passionate Michigan beer industry in every way possible. To learn more, visit us at mibeer.com or say hello on one of our social media pages, as we love hearing from you. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer.
Let's drink